You don't have to completely leap to a whole nother career or just quit and go meditate for 5 months to figure out yourself. You can start exploring things like that where you can start to find your fit and where you start to get interest and thrive. And so I want people to understand that baby steps are still steps. It helps you start to get to that understanding without being completely terrifying.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Dr. Megan Sprinkle. Dr. Sprinkle is a veterinary nutritionist working as the scientific communications manager for Whitebridge Pet. I'm gonna let you tell your backstory, but I think one thing, I'm sure you'll talk about it, but you have your own podcast that looks at, kind of maybe the non-traditional path in veterinary medicine. And so I think hearing your story and us talking about that can be, really beneficial to our veterinary colleagues. So thank you for coming on the show today. I'm excited.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us your background. Tell us, kind of what brought you to veterinary medicine, what brought you, sort of down the path that you've chosen.
Yeah. So like many veterinarians, my story goes way, way back, knowing that I wanted to work with animals from a very young age. But my interest in animals was around marine mammals and zoo and wildlife. And so I was already kind of interested in a little less than traditional career path. And my family was very good about allowing me to have lots of different experiences around these animals, which was not in a typical veterinary clinic that a lot of people think about. So I was able to see lots of different people working with animals in lots of different ways with different backgrounds, different degrees. And I loved it. And I loved how everybody kind of worked together all for a similar goal in trying to take care of these animals. And so while my actual career path changed, as you said, I'm a veterinary nutritionist and I focus on cats and dogs, which is not marine mammals. There was a lot of, exploring throughout that. I think that was a huge part of I think I'm a naturally curious person. Even from a young age, I was a very curious child. But I think that has been a big part of, where I am today, why I have the podcast that I do about Life Reimagined. And so I did go to vet school. I got out, was very quick to do an internship, went right into a nutrition residency. And then another non-traditional route for me was, instead of going into academia or even private practice, I actually went straight into industry. The reason I did that was I really wanted to have a big impact in the world. And I thought that industry was going to give me the resources and the connections and the ability to learn very different types of skill sets. And so that's why I went that route. So I have been working with several different companies since, including more of like a third party, where I got to work with lots of different companies and organizations, which works really well with my interest with entrepreneurship. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's well, and I think we'll dive into this, but I think, we both did the internship and residency route, and I think one of the things that often I sense with other veterinarians and maybe even especially specialists is the amount of time that goes into sort of getting to that point. It's getting to be a general practice veterinarian is a lot of time, right? It's like you're 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of vet school. We'll add another at least 4 years for specialists to get to their chosen specialty. So it feels like you have sort of dedicated so much time and effort, and you have, to being that, whatever it is, you've created your own identity. And so then having thoughts of, I want to try something different. I want to podcast. I want to go into industry. I want to, do something that's entirely different, is sometimes feels like you're not doing it right, I guess, is like, I get that. I've had those feelings myself, and I get that sense when I've talked to other people that have sort of made that entrepreneurial leap from veterinary medicine, where it's like, oh, there's this idea of like, I was, most of us are the kid that loved animals and wanted to help them. And then you move on and you do all the steps to get to, kind of being that um, professional. And so you literally have, it's been your entire life. And so then starting to think about some things outside of that. So it's interesting that you say you kind of have always been that way, or had that curiosity, and been provided those opportunities by your parents. So will you talk a little bit about that? Like, kind of what made you feel like non-traditional was sort of okay, and not, because I think people don't always think it's okay, and it is, but that's the whole point of this conversation. But like, what led to you being okay with it?
I think when I was focused on marine mammals and I went to Auburn for vet school, and they don't have really any type of exotic or zoo or anything. And I really had to find my own experiences, find my own mentors. And there was a part of me that I don't know why this is slightly like shameful, but I actually liked the idea of being different. Like, I think there's all of us that have that little bit of us that we want to be special. We want to be a little bit different. And so maybe that helped a little bit early on understanding that it's okay to do different things. You may have to work in different ways to get it done. I'm not going to say harder because everybody works hard in vet school, but so I think that helped a little bit. And then going back to, even the name of your podcast, Know Your Why. And you talked about a lot of veterinarians know that we love animals and we want to help animals. What we have to get to the point is that's our value, that's our why. The way that looks could look like so many different things. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, back to that natural curiosity of exploring and see what's possible is such a helpful mindset to not limit yourself, that you can go and explore something and realize that you can still accomplish your mission, your why, in so many different ways that may actually feel and be better for you personally than what you thought was traditional or what you were supposed to do going through vet school.
Yeah, that's great. I think, well, I guess I just agree with you in the sense that I also have always had that feeling of, I do like doing things a little bit differently. And I don't know if everybody has that. I'm really not sure. Like, maybe some people do and some people don't, or everybody has it and sometimes it gets stifled for people. I really don't know what the what the reality of that scenario is, but it is something that I think both of us have this feeling of like, if that is you, if you feel like you want to do things differently, it's okay. Like, it's not only is it okay, it might actually be better for you in terms of, quality of life and longevity in the industry and things like that. Because I mean, I had very much gotten to a point where I don't even know if like burnout's the right word. I just wasn't passionate about what I was doing anymore. I was just, it had become just a job. And I don't know when it happened, and I'm sure it happened a little bit over time, but it was, I knew, sort of started thinking about, it's like, this isn't about hours worked, because when I was a resident, I was basically there all the time and I loved my residency. I still look back at that as like 3 in my internship too, like 4 years of my life that I loved. Like, it was such a great part, time. It was a hard time, but like, I really enjoyed it. And I had just gotten to the point where, for whatever reason, that passion had gone away. And I really needed to reimagine what my life should look like in veterinary medicine. And it wasn't, I never really thought I wanted completely out, but I did realize I wanted it to look different. And like, making that leap was scary, but at the same time, like, so happy I did. And now I love surgery again. So it's kind of like, I think we get into that rut where it's like, oh, this is just how it has to be. I have, you know, I trained, I have this job, I have to do these things, I have to check these boxes. And I think important to know that it's not necessarily true. And again, probably not, maybe not the healthiest thing for us, because our lives and our priorities and our why evolves over time. So you have different things that are important to you at different times in your life. So that's just, uh, I couldn't agree more that, it's something to be explored in your career.
Yeah, and just to reiterate that part, because I was thinking about it and then you said it, is that this is something that you constantly can reassess, because what you are passionate or what was making you thrive at one point in your life can evolve. And for example, like I'm almost 31 weeks pregnant with my first child. So as life changes and
Yeah.
things are, changing in your environment, even the economy, right? We went through COVID, things change, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. Like we need to be able to ask ourselves those questions, I think, and in a curious way, not in a like I spent all these years doing it this way. And so, I think the phrase is sunk cost fallacy, and you have a very wide audience, especially with entrepreneurs, and I'm sure they understand that you have to understand when it is time to change. And it's not a bad thing. It's you are listening to what you need and want in that time and adapting to it. And so I like to think of it as really fun and exciting. Not to say that
Yeah.
it's easy by any means to change, but this is new opportunities to explore things that you just haven't yet. And so hopefully I would like to get people to embrace that a little bit more. And because I really think that is a key to making sure that we are thriving, no matter what industry we are in.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question, but I think my experience, and you have your podcast, and I would wonder if you have had the same experience. My experience when I talk to people that have let themselves go this route, where they're exploring alternative ideas of what their veterinary career looks like, and what they're, uh, you know, scratching that entrepreneurial itch, if you will. I mean, people that actually do that, go down that route, they're thinking about investing. They're thinking about, hey, maybe I won't do this forever, or maybe it'll look different for me. They seem happier to me. The people that are allowing those things to happen in their minds seem happier to me. And I'd wonder if you have had that same experience with with people you speak to on your podcast. If you talk to, because I talk to a lot of veterinarians. I mean, I've had some on the podcast, but I talk to a lot of them in terms of, hey, we have, investment opportunities. Is this something that would be interesting to you? And there's a stark difference in the conversations between, like, the people that sort of are entrepreneurial or business owners, or they sort of get it. They're like, there need to be other things in my life besides, like, I just go to work every day and take care of other people's animals as fast as I can, kind of thing. And versus those that feel stuck. And so I wondered if what your experience with that has been.
Yeah, absolutely. The people that are open to thinking about opportunities are the ones that are very less likely to get stuck, because they know I can sit and
Yeah.
I can think about what are my options. And it even doesn't have to be a crazy change. I have interviewed lots of people across veterinary medicine, and there's some that when you first look at them, they may actually look a little more traditional. But I had one that went out not too long ago, and he's an owner of 6 practices. He never wanted to be a practice owner, but because of situations and his significant other kind of put the idea in his head that you can do this, if you're not happy here, do it your own way. And he did. And look at him now. He's got like 5, 6 practices all over Boston, and he's thriving. And he's actually only technically practicing about a day a week, so maybe a little less traditional, but still, he's in clinics. He's still a kind of the cat dog veterinarian, but it was that opportunity to sit down and think about doing something different from the way you're doing it now. I think there's the phrase that insanity is doing the same thing expecting different results. So if you're not happy with something in one way, usually it takes doing something different to get to another state of being. Now I will say sometimes it's a little bit mindset, but throw that in there.
Yeah.
Ask yourself. I've had to do that too. It's like, is it me in this situation? But yeah, I absolutely. It's the sitting down, thinking about what are the options, and sometimes, just like I mentioned in that case scenario where his significant other gave him an idea, I think, I know that it's really good to also ask people around you or listen to podcasts like ours on getting different ideas of how people are doing things.
Yeah.
And you don't have to necessarily do it exactly like the way they're doing it, but it might spark ideas and help you ask the right questions so you can get to a place that is going to help you be more happy and thrive.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's, and I was going to ask you, sort of examples, but it's funny you say that, I have a very close friend who basically similar situation. Like and the funny thing is that we mentioned kind of stage of life, and you have different ideas of where you should be, and I remember when he was, relatively shortly out of vet school, and he's like, I want to buy a practice. And so he bought a practice, and then he bought another practice, and then he partnered with some people and opened a specialty practice. He's not a specialist. Like he realized, like, being in the clinic, sort of practicing medicine 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whatever, people are doing, he wasn't for him. He didn't want, but he loves being a business owner, and he's really good at it. Like, and it's just like, it's just, the willingness. And the funny thing is, like, at that time, when he started doing it, that was probably 10 or 12 years ago. And I thought it was a little bit crazy. I was like that, like, that's where I was in my life. I was like, that's a little bit crazy, but okay, do your thing. And and now, since, like, I'm all about that. I'm all about, like, business ownership and entrepreneurship, and so it's just kind of, you might not be ready to make the change right now. That's totally fine. But if you feel you get in a rut, you feel like you're stuck, that's when you really need to be open to, like, how could this look differently? What can I do outside of this day to day to get, kind of in a situation where I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and still have, I think inside of almost all of us is still that little kid that just loves animals. Like, it's really like, you think, you go through a clinic. I have a mobile practice, a mobile surgery practice, so I'm in and out of different clinics all the time. And it's like, the sound when an adorable puppy comes in. Like, I don't even have to be, I can be in the OR and hear it and know what just happened, right? Like, it's like, here's this, cute new puppy or cute new kitten of someone that came in for their first vaccines, and it's just like everybody loving on them and squeezing them and stuff. And it's like, we all really, almost all of us came from that place, like just being that person that's, like, excited about animals and wants to help them. But being actually going through vet school, becoming a veterinarian, doing that job, that part of it is like 5%. Like, the new cute puppy thing is 5%. And I would say, as a specialist, it's even less than that. I don't get to see as a surgeon, I don't see the puppies and kittens almost ever. And it's good. I don't want them to have to be having surgery at such a young age, but, like, it's not necessarily what your, sort of childhood dream looks like. And so then you have to come up with a way to create the new dream that fits in, being a veterinarian.
Yeah. And again, sometimes it starts very small explorations. For example, like you could go to a veterinary conference and say, I'm really interested in doing something a little bit different. So go to very different talks,
Mhm.
explore physical therapy, explore nutrition,
Yeah.
explore these different areas and start to see, oh, wow, yeah, I could go to five of those types of topics, and you start to understand where you can grow, and then bring that to the clinic and say, hey, could I do, you know, um, education events for pet parents on this on Friday nights or something like that. And there's lots of, in my opinion, there prevent you from having to be a jumper or a leaper, right?
Right.
You don't
Right.
have to completely leap to a whole nother career or just quit and, go meditate for 5 months to figure out yourself.
Right.
You can start exploring things like that, where you can start to find your fit and where you start to get interest and thrive. And so I want people to understand that baby steps are still steps. It helps you start
Mm.
to get to that understanding without being completely terrifying. So for example, you do a lot of real estate investing. Well, start with something small. If you want to explore different ways to diversify your income. So it can be, it doesn't have to be a leap.
Yeah.
There are steps that you can do to really start to grow that.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, and neither of us is saying like quit being a veterinarian and go do something entirely different. It's finding ways to fit that into the design of your life. And I actually love the point about going to the conferences. I think a lot of us go to conferences and it's like, oh, I'm going to try and learn some new technique, or I'm going to try to learn about some new disease or whatever. But the conferences are really, thankfully, the conferences are actually starting to offer some of these alternative type of lectures like you're speaking about. I know someone who gives lectures on using social media to help their veterinary practice. Like there are things that you might not think of as medicine but are still important to your life and career at them, and there are business tracks and things like that. The other thing I would add to that is go to the vendor room, right?
Mm.
You're going to have the traditional, like, IDEX is going to be there, and Antec, and all of the, companies are going to have their stuff that they're selling. But there's also starting to pop up other types of companies in the vendor room. We did a vendor booth at our real estate company. We did a vendor booth at ACVS a few years back, and I mean it was funny because people steered clear. I mean, it was like it was different. So people were like, "Oh, okay." They just steered clear of it. But I would say, go to some of those ones that aren't what you traditionally think. Like, oh, I got to buy this new piece of equipment, or I got to find, some I don't know, other thing to add to the clinic. Like, try thinking outside the box about how it can benefit you in other ways rather than just purchasing that new X-ray machine or whatever you want to call it. But I think the conference idea is great, and there are more and more people that are veterinarians that are using social media to talk about things like this, and how they have maybe integrated that into their careers, or what other businesses they're doing as well. Well, those people are at the conferences. Go talk to them. Like, go meet them, and they're very nice people. Just go meet them and say hi and be like, look, I feel stuck. I saw you on Instagram. What do you do? Like, and I think people are more than happy to help, and try and just be open to exploring those options.
Absolutely. I love that. So I'm a super nerd, and the expo hall is also one of my favorite parts. One, because you meet lots of different people, and the exhibitors that are there, they want to talk to you. Like they would not have been there if they did not want
Yeah.
you to come talk
Yeah.
to them. And especially the smaller booths, because, the IDEXs of the world, they can have these fancy giveaways that they have lines or,
Yeah.
around the hall
Yeah.
for people to go win a stuffy or something. But, it's the little ones sometimes that you really start to uh, know what's going on out there. You'll meet a lot more entrepreneurs. And the interesting thing about what I do is, so I kind of get to be at this really interesting crossroad between the veterinary community and all of the industry and entrepreneurs that are trying to work with the veterinary industry. And it's kind of funny because you both are scared of each other. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of entrepreneurs that
Yeah.
they want to talk to vets, but they're a little intimidated. They're not quite sure how to talk with you. Or so the more that we can start to work together, I think the more you will start to learn, whether it's maybe you become an advisor for one of these organizations or these startups. They want that for sure. They may not be able to pay you very well, but at least you'll be informed and you get to make a difference in a part of animal health that you may not normally have been able to impact. And so they're, just talking to people. And I am an introvert. I completely get it. Like, I do love people. I love these conferences, but man, by like 8, 9 o'clock, and I'm getting better. I'm trying to push it out a little bit later, but I'm turning into a pumpkin and I need to go back to my room and rest. So
Yeah.
I totally get the introvert thing, but I think it's a lot of the people that we meet, or the people's stories that we hear, that start to spark so many different things. One, I think it's the people that we get to meet and develop relationships with that make life a lot more fun. And I
Mhm.
know there's a percent of veterinarians who are like, I became a veterinarian, or I got into vet med because I don't like people. I just like animals. Well, I'm
Right.
sorry that like people are life.
Yeah.
um, no matter where you are in
Yeah.
vet med, you're gonna have to interact with people in some form or fashion. And I promise it is actually really rewarding when you do put forth the effort to
Yeah.
make a good relationship with people. So yeah, by all means, like go talk to people, even if you're in a education room and you're there a few minutes early, lean over to the next person, just say hello, and you never know what can happen just
Yeah.
by talking to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the introvert part. I say these things like it's so easy. I actually very much struggle with the go introduce myself, talk to. It's like easy on a podcast when you're like one on one. I don't think about you're just having a conversation with one person. You sort of know that there's going to be a shared topic ahead of time. So I'm not suggesting that I'm any good at this. I'm just saying that it is a good use of conferences to find and again, when I've done it, like, I'm always very happy that I did. It's like just making those connections and learning, just what other people are doing is um, really fascinating, and has been, I think, just, it's almost like that proof of concept, right? It's like you start talking to other people that they're doing it a little bit differently, and look, they're okay, and they're happy, and they haven't exploded. It's just taking that little bit of starting with the baby steps, and then kind of leaning towards whatever it is that you think will make your life a little bit more complete. And I mean, sometimes it just means working less. Sometimes it's just like, I just got to step back and work a little bit less for a little while, or whatever it looks like to you is you know feel free to explore that and kind of move in that direction. And I think it's can be scary, but again, it's like that's why you have your podcast. That's why we are here. If someone wants to talk to us about it, like, there's just ways to be, or people you can find that will help you if you want to make that transition.
Yeah, if I can comment on that too, I struggle with this myself. It's the working less to do more. I find that, again, your broad audience probably can all relate to this, that we get into this busy, like we have to be doing a lot of things all the time. I've even one point got to it's like a out of body experience. I could see myself like just not being able to put down the laptop.
Yeah.
Because I was like, no, I have to be working. There's always something to do. You're right. There is always something you could be doing.
Yeah.
There's another email that's going to come in. But if we don't give ourselves the space to stop and think,
Yeah.
that it's very counterproductive. You'll never be able to understand what your values are in the moment, or if you do need a change, you've got to stop and check in. And so it's something that, again, I'm very not good at this because I'm just like busy. Because again, there's always going to be something to do. But I think that that principle, I recently heard a podcast that was, the author of something about something like doing less to do more or something like that.
Yeah.
And it really is right. It's sometimes we just need to stop. And a lot of entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs, are actually really good at this. There
Mm-hmm.
was, I can't remember which one it is, maybe you'll know this, that he would take weeks off and just go read alone on a beach somewhere, and it allowed him to kind of rejuvenate, refresh his mind so he could think of all these ideas. If you're not giving yourself the space to think, how are you going to know,
Yeah.
how to change your adapter if you're doing okay? And maybe it's just, yeah, I stopped and I thought, yeah, my life's pretty good. I think I'm on the right track. Well, that's good too. Like, you need to be able to do that. So highly encourage implementing more of that space for just sitting without scrolling, just thinking. It's really hard.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. But just giving yourself the space to think.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and just to there's a couple of books that I have found very helpful on this topic, and again I still struggle with it a lot, but it's so probably the most I don't know, like paradigm shifting book I've ever read. It's Who Not How,
Mm,
and the title is like sort of obvious what it's about, but basically it sort of gave me the permission that I needed to not have to be the one to do everything. And vets, I think, are notoriously bad about this. Like I see it. Like I said, I go in these clinics and I'm like, I see vets putting in catheters or like doing things. I'm like, you have a whole staff of people that can do those things for you. Like, be the doctor. Like, teach them how to do it, empower them, and then be the doctor, right? Like, do what you need to do. And it's that, I mean, that is what I've done with my mobile surgery business. Like, all I do is surgery. My techs do everything else. Like, and it makes my life so much better and allows me to be more efficient in doing other things, working on real estate, whatever, or like just not working. Like, it frees up some time to not be working. And so it's a something, it's a concept that I think is for whatever reason hard in veterinary medicine. It's like very, again, like almost accepted that the vets have to do everything. And I don't know if that comes from us um, effectively learning about every single species. Like, I don't, just like that, the concept that you have to know, vets think they have to know how to be a surgeon and an internist and a nutritionist and a cardiologist. Like, they think they have to do all of the things. And it's starting to think about how ways you can shift that. I think so that book was really helpful for me. There's the 4 Hour Work Week, which may be what you're talking about in I believe that's Tim Ferriss, but he essentially talks about how he used to, essentially, be a workaholic, worked 100 hours a week, and things were breaking because of that, and how he sort of restructured everything. So that's a good one. And then there's another one called Buy Back Your Time. So there's like, I mean, it's all the same stuff in the sense that there's like a couple of overlying principles, and the number one being you don't have to do everything. Two, like, you need some time to think, like you just said. You need to take some time, whether that's daily, weekly, whatever. Like, but however often you do that, it has to be proportional, right? So if you're only doing that, once a quarter, it probably needs to be for a week, right? But if you take an hour every day to sort of just clear your mind to think, you set your phone, turn off notifications, set an alarm clock, like set an alarm, like 45 minutes, I do nothing but sit and think, rest, write down ideas, whatever it is you need to do to clear your mind. So there's a lot of stuff out there about that. And um, I think that, you can, I guess, tie in the financial side of this where veterinarians are always, kind of margins are thin. And so, the idea of taking some time to think or hiring someone else to do some things, like, you will make more money by implementing these systems and freeing up some of your time to do the higher value thing, the higher dollar activities. Like, that's how businesses work. That's how big businesses get successful. That's how, the famous entrepreneurs you would know about, like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And that's how they have people that they've empowered to do things around them. And they're more of the idea people. Like, really, they're the visionaries. And so it's recognizing, like, if you're a practice owner, you for sure need to be implementing these types of things. And if you're an employee, you can still sort of tie these concepts into, like, the business of your life and have it be very applicable.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let me switch gears, Megan. I want to ask you the questions I ask every guest. I think this is an incredibly important topic that we could talk about all day long, but I also don't want to keep you here forever. But the first one is, related to the name of the show, being Know Your Why. So I always like to ask every guest, what is your why? I know we've got a baby coming, so that's probably a big piece of what you're thinking about a lot lately. But but you've been sort of, as you said, different, willing to be different, go down that different path for a long time. So what is your why?
Yeah, I am a very purpose-driven person. So even with a family, yes, I do love my family. The the why or the values, they can still fit in there. So some of my big whys are really wanting to spread more kindness and curiosity in the world. And I think I've kind of settled in that word curiosity because I think it can apply in a lot of different ways, such as even empathy. When you approach a conversation, instead of assuming or just jumping in with your own thoughts, why don't you start with a few questions just to understand a little bit more of what's going on? So I think that is a huge step that can improve quality of life for everyone. And I think encourage more people to work together too, because that's another thing that I absolutely love is bringing together people with such different perspectives to come and think about a problem. I think that's the best way to find solutions is when you do have this diverse group of people coming together, because you're going to miss something if you aren't asking and being curious. And so that's kind of where I have come to understand that's where I thrive, is when I do have the ability to be curiosity. I'm one of those brainstormers too that's kind of stuck in a employee body. So I get the, the value of being able to brainstorm and have ideas and then work with people to get something accomplished. So that's kind of my why. It's probably not the most clear why explanation, but it's definitely what I have found as a theme in a lot of what I do and when I get excited.
There's no wrong answer to that question. Just so occasionally people are like, oh, I don't know if that was like, no, there's no wrong answers to any of these questions. Really, it's and I get it. I think one of the things that you talk about curiosity, and one of the things that I also am a very curious person. I used to be really afraid to ask the questions. I didn't want to look dumb or whatever, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people probably are afraid to ask the questions. But what I realized is I learn so much more and become a better, insert whatever you want to after that, if I'm asking the questions. And it's asking the questions of the people around me. It's asking the questions of myself. It's asking, it's having, being open to people asking me questions. And the answer can't be, that's because that's how I do it. And I think that there's just, it allows you to just continue to grow and learn by having that curiosity. And I think that's one of the things too. I had mentioned that I lost a bit of my passion for doing surgery and things like that. Was part of that was because it wasn't a lot more for me to learn in the surgery world. What I never lost passion about was teaching residents. That was for me, like, for a long time before I made the changes. Like, that was the joy I had left in, because I got to see them grow. Um, and I learned that, I realized that, as I started going into real estate and entrepreneurship more heavily, that was another place for my mind to grow and explore. And so it allowed me to then be like more passionate about everything. It wasn't just that. It was like, oh, well, now my brain gets to do things again. And so it's like I can, apply that to being a surgeon, being an entrepreneur, being a father, what, any of the things. If we're asking questions about how we can be better about them, I think it's a really important topic.
Yeah, I
Um,
think a lot of us really need to have an element of growth
yeah,
constantly. And if you aren't at a point where you have questions, then you probably are stagnant. you,
yeah,
you might want to get to a place that where you feel a little bit more challenged in some way or another. And so absolutely, I think one of the reasons why I love entrepreneurs is they tend to be very curious people. They want to solve problems and you have to ask questions to figure out what's the right solution. And so I love the entrepreneurship mindset. Plus, usually there's lots of passion and enthusiasm, which is very exciting to
right.
be around. But I think,
Yeah,
especially in the veterinary industry, we feel like we have to know all the answers. So we shouldn't ask questions because we should know. And I think that's really dangerous. I again, luckily, have been a very curious person who asks lots of questions. Makes me a great podcast host because I love to ask questions. But I think it's something we have to understand that you're not. I'll say should or supposed to. I don't think you're supposed to have all the answers. I think it's great to ask questions. One, because we're most of the time dealing with human beings and we never know all the answers when it comes to human beings. So always have questions
yeah,
for other people. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things we could go in this area, but absolutely, I agree.
yeah. Now, I would take that a step further. You don't have all the answers. I
No.
don't have all the answers. Like, nobody does. Like, and so, but so recognizing that we just don't have all the answers, and focusing on, the things that we do know, and the areas that we want to grow. You're going to be more, I guess, valuable to everyone around you by doing that. So it's, I think it incredibly important piece of the puzzle is curiosity. I've always had it, but I have for a long time was afraid to ask the questions. So I think that it's, something to take that message from me. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. You'll grow a lot faster by asking. Um, Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge. Special skill, a hobby, anything to let listeners know you a little better.
Oh goodness. Well, we talked about I have a podcast. I also, so how I really got into I think more the entrepreneurial mindset and everything was getting married. And so I went through a huge understanding around money mindset. And like, this is a whole long story, but through all that, it started to open me up about being more curious in another area that was for a lot of veterinarians utterly terrifying. And so, when you get married, and then I stopped and I realized, wow, if I think about both of our families, if something happens to one individual between everybody, I think I'm up next to be the most financially stable person. So I guess I better take this a little bit more seriously. And then also, just being married, things happen when you're around someone else. And, he went through a big burnout being an IT engineer. And so we had to sit down and decide what we were going to do different, and he decided to work on make this 3D printing business. And that's actually where I started to learn marketing and social media, and found that I really find it fascinating because it's really psychology. And
Yeah.
so I love people. I love trying to understand how they think. So I do have a big interest in marketing, social media. I'm still very self-taught, but I listen to tons of podcasts. Very much a podcast nerd in every form or fashion of podcasting. And I just love to learn. And so those are definitely areas that I enjoy listening to and learning more.
Yeah, that's a great story, and actually a great point that we're talking about the veterinary world because we come from that. But these issues of being stagnant in whatever career path you are, like this could apply to anyone. I mean, any career path. If you're feeling stuck, you're not happy there, start looking at what your alternatives are. It doesn't have to stay that way. So I think it's a really great point to mention that your husband went through that and is not in the veterinary world. So um, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
So my favorite platform is LinkedIn. So you can usually find me on LinkedIn. Just if you're not a veterinarian, just let me know that you heard me or something, because sometimes I get really weird requests and I'm just like, not sure why you want to talk to me.
Yeah.
But also, I do have an email as well. I think it's hello@vetlifereimagined.com if you want to reach there. And then you can definitely find me on my podcast. It's both video and audio as well, if you want to listen to some pretty cool stories within the veterinary industry.
Well, we'll put all that in the show notes. My last question for you, and I'll this is not a real estate related talk, so I'll sort of reform the question. But what piece of advice? I mean, you talk to a lot of people on your podcast. You're obviously very open to kind of things looking different. So, what piece of advice would you give to someone who they hear this or they hear your podcast and they're thinking, "Hey, I'm feeling stuck." How would you suggest they get started? Reimagining their life.
Start forming a community, a support group. I think that, as much as I'll speak for myself, raised to be very independent and trying to figure things out for yourself, there's nothing like having a good support network. Sometimes it's just someone that is going to be there to say, it's okay to try something new, or it's okay that you feel this way. And so the more that you can build this community and start to listen to more things and start exploring these things, and that support network may not always be physical human beings. It could be listening to podcasts. I think that's just really some of the best things, is to have a feeling that you're not alone, is really to surround yourself with good people that are going to put you in that mindset and be there to support you. So I think that's some of the best things that you can do.
Yeah, I think having that community around you is key, because I mean, again, neither of us is saying like you have to make this big leap where you just leave everything that you're doing behind, but those making those changes is scary, and you probably run into some hurdles and roadblocks, and having a good support system around you can be super important to that. So I love it. Well, Megan, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your story and talking what I think is an extremely important topic with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like Dr. Sprinkle. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?